Do you think I ran a campaign where white supremacists had a platform? You going to look me in the face and tell me that?
It did. Kellyanne
really?
did.
Oh, and that's how you lost?
It did.
Do you think you could have just had a decent message for the white working class voters? Do you think this woman who has nothing in common with anybody...
I'm not saying that's why you won, but that's
these
kind of
counties
campaign
we
that was
flipped
run.
it over
Yes.
200. How about it's Hillary Clinton? She doesn't connect with people. How about they have nothing in common with her?
A lot of raw feelings from the campaign teams up at Harvard this week. We're going to talk about all the week's politics now with our roundtable, including our chief political analyst, Matthew Dowd, Republican strategist Alex Castellanos, President Obama's former strategist, David Axelrod, and Republican strategist, Sarah Fagan. I think at least 3 of the 4 of you have been at those forums before. That was probably one of the most heated ones ever. But let's talk more broadly about the transition. Matthew Dowd, I think one of the things we've seen this week is President-elect Trump is going to continue to do things his way. If this morning is any indication, Vice President-elect Mike Pence is going to come out and explain it. And, you know, you really see no apologies here. No apologies for the phone call to Taiwan. Mexico is going to pay for the wall. 35% tariffs are coming.
Well, I think what we've learned is that campaign Trump, who didn't pay attention to any rules and didn't abide by any normal sense of normalcy in the course of a political campaign at a presidential level, is not going to do that as president-elect, and is probably not going to do that when he enters office on January 20th. I have to give Mike Pence some credit. The ability for him to maneuver around all the different tweets, the things that were said in a manner and tone that I think is very good for the administration. I would hope he could sort of use some of that on his boss, who would be better off with more of that. But one of the things I think fundamentally we're learning is Donald Trump is going to only talk to the American public right now either through a rally or a tweet, because he's not doing it in any kind of press way.
Mike Pence playing a powerful role behind the scenes as well.
A very stabilizing force. I think engenders a lot of trust. In a new administration, great relationships with the Republican House and Senate. It's going to be very effective there. But, you know, we're seeing disruption, and it's freaking out the news media and the old establishment in Washington. Guess what? That's why Donald Trump was elected, to do exactly that. I feel like we're watching Elvis Presley on the Ed Sullivan Show.
So do you think the Taiwan call was deliberate?
Yes, I think actually it was. Apparently his aides were over there at some point, and, you know, it was almost 3 months ago to the day that China snubbed the President of the United States, wouldn't give him steps to get off of Air Force One. Yeah. And so a little pushback here. You know, we're learning a lot. Donald Trump negotiates from strength.
Well, first of all, I agree with Matthew that if Mike Pence were a football player, he'd be a candidate for the Heisman Trophy right now for the way he maneuvered around some of those questions. And I think he's very skillful at it, and it is helpful to Trump. And what you took away from it was, we're going to do those things that are sort of what the Republican agenda has been. We're going to cut taxes, deregulate. We're going to repeal Obamacare, though he was very unclear as to what comes next. And he sort of navigates around some of the tariffs and some of the more irksome questions as well. That's his point of view. But here's the point, Alex, on China. He's not Elvis Presley on the Ed Sullivan Show. He's President of the United States. And so when he says something, it matters. When he says 35% tariffs on companies that move, or when he says to Taiwan or to China, through his action, we're changing the policy. These can have monumental impacts, and that is what's concerning to me.
You're right, David. Setting aside the process of this phone call and these phone calls, on the substance, let's not forget, in his first national policy speech back in April, Donald Trump said, "America is too predictable." So I agree with Alex. I don't think this was accidental. I think Donald Trump knew exactly what he was doing when he took that call from the Taiwanese leader.
I don't think though.
Let me push back on David a second, though.
Just one thing on the China thing for this is, it may have been intentional. Donald Trump does some things intentional, some things visceral. But I don't think it was intentional for Donald Trump to sort of reset the China policy of the United States of America through one phone call.
No.
I think he got a phone call. It fed his ego. If the president of Taiwan calls him up, I think the troubling thing is not so much that he had a phone call. I think Donald Trump can talk to anybody, any leader he wants in the world. Go for it. I think the problem is when you don't have a real fundamental strategy in place. What is your Far Eastern policy? Who are the staff surrounding it? What's it going to do to your relationship with North Korea that you need the Chinese for? What's it going to do on climate change that you need the Chinese for? And what's it going to do on Iran that you need the Chinese for? Donald Trump didn't think all those things
there's
through.
a growing
Alex first.
chorus.
I think that's quite a reach to say that he didn't think all of those things through and that no one around him did as well.
Well, he didn't.
China,
He didn't meet with anybody from the State Department or the National Security
China has
Council.
been running free now
Yes.
for decades. We have an illusionary policy here where there is no Taiwan. Yes, there is, and we agree not to that the emperor is closed whenever it's convenient here. Meanwhile, China is much more assertive and aggressive in the South China Sea. They have double the number of submarines in the Asian Pacific that we do. They will soon have nearly 3 times as many.
Not to mention they
and
haven't
no one
reigned in
has
North
pushed
Korea.
back.
And so
I think Donald Trump
But
is dealing with the United States a new hand of cards here.
Are you when you think 3 steps down the road, is this going to help get China on board with North Korea or hurt?
Before Donald Trump's election, there has been a growing chorus in the Republican Party that we needed to be more aggressive with China, that we need to shift from a policy of appeasement to a policy of counterbalance.
Projecting
that
American
China
strength
has
is
not
going to
been a
help.
good actor on the world stage, and it's time for America to be more assertive in its relationship
One of the ways
with China.
America could have been assertive would be to have approved the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was something that China deeply feared and now doesn't have to worry
I
about
agree with
because
you
this
on that.
president said he wouldn't do it.
Many of those
but
folks
Alex,
agree with
if
you
this
on
were
that.
just a one-off, you could say, okay, this was his China policy. But speaking with the president of Kazakhstan, the strong man there, and praising him, talking to the president, to the leader of Pakistan, and suggesting you'll come there, inviting the very odd leader of the Philippines here. All of these things have impacts that go beyond simply a conversation between 2 men when you're president of the United States. And there doesn't appear to be, as Matthew says, any preparation for any of that.
You talk about one-offs, and I want to take that opportunity to move on to this whole carrier deal as well. Listening to Mike Pence this morning, Matthew Dett, it sounds like the carrier negotiations are a one-off as well, and now we're moving much more towards what President-elect Trump was talking about this morning in his tweets, that tariff.
Well, listen, I think this is a complex thing. I think there is, for Donald Trump and the voters that Donald Trump spoke for, who felt like nobody had been talking about them, especially in the Rust Belt and manufacturing industry. They think both parties forgot about them, didn't really deal with them. He goes and says, I'm going to do something about this. He's elected president, and then something is done about this. Well, you can argue about whether or not there's some grand economic policy there. I don't think it is. It seems like it's just a case-by-case basis of what he's doing. I think the problem with Donald Trump, and I think Mike Pence faced this on this you're questioning today. I think Paul Ryan is going to face this as Speaker, and I think Mitch McConnell is going to face this. This is not a Republican conservative strategy, and it's no part of any economic policy that any Republican has bought into or been part of.
But it is leadership to provide one company relief from an oppressive tax and regulatory regime. Is it the entire answer? Excuse me. Is it the entire answer? No, but not a sparrow falls.
Well, I think more importantly,
here's my
But the most
question.
important
Here's my
thing, the
question,
most important thing that happened in that meeting is the carrier CEO opened Donald Trump's eyes. He said he would trade all those benefits for one thing: a more open economy with less regulation.
I wonder if he told
Washington is crushing companies like that.
I wonder
so
if
I think you're going to see a Trump effort to open up the economy
the folks
from
at Carrier
regulation.
that we're going to put a 35% tariff on those 1,300 jobs that are going to Mexico, because if you net it out, I don't think that's a winner for them. My guess is he didn't tell them that.
On this tariff issue, Donald Trump is going to run right into the Republican Congress. I do not believe that Republicans in Congress, those that were just elected a few weeks ago, are going to support any kind of tariff, any kind of economic policy that is counter to what has been part of the Republican brand
But Sarah,
for
isn't it important?
decades.
But isn't it important for a Republican leader to deal with the world, not saying, hey, here's what we'd like to, in an ideal world? That's the opening bid in a negotiation.
Look,
Isn't it important for a Republican leader to start asking for more so that we end up getting something that'll work for us? Donald Trump is a free trader with teeth. He's willing to fight for that. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Matthew.
The most important thing any leader can do is tell the truth to the American public. to tell the truth to the American public about what it means to be in a global economy, what it means that how you're going to have to get retraining, what it means to in this environment that we're in, what it means that trade really isn't responsible for the loss of most of the jobs. It's technology and innovation, in the course. That's the truth. And Donald Trump,
no, it's not. By the way, regulatory regime is responsible for the loss of
the truth is we are in a global economy, and the fact is Americans have benefited through cheaper products. Now, your question is,
so why isn't Germany have a trade deficit? Why do they have a trade surplus? Because globalization should be affecting them. We are oppressing American business. Political and artificial solutions are killing
it.
it.
It is something he's allergic to.
Alex, if a Democratic president had done what Donald Trump did in the last few days and said what he said this morning, you would be the first one who would be howling about it. I agree with Matthew. It's good politics for that Rust Belt area where he ran. But in terms of policy, it is wrong-headed policy. And what is needed is a real strategy for dealing with these revolutionary changes in our economy. And we have no idea whether he has one.
Donald Trump is going to have to navigate a very changing Republican base. The base of the Republican Party is now against trade, yet the leaders in Congress are pro-trade. He has to navigate what is going to be a very tricky, disparate group of people in his broad coalition if he is going to be effective. One-off deal in Carrier, huge political win. He has a long way to go.
We only have about 30 seconds left. I want to go quickly around the table. Who's the choice for Secretary of State?
I don't think anybody that we've really had on in the shows or we've really focused on. I think it's going to be someone we're unaware of next week.
As far as I understand, everyone's been ruled out. Mitt Romney, Rudy Giuliani, so I have no answer.
Castellanos.
Everybody's taking a pass.
I'm gonna go with Giuliani because I think he's going to ultimately go with the person who was maybe arguably the most strongly for him.
So at the end, come back to the lawyers. Very interesting. We'll be right back.